Hey everyone, if you are a frequent viewer of this channel, you know that we missed one of our experts last week. We missed Wednesday, and Wednesday is Anna Kelly. And she's been gracious enough to come back to us right after getting back from Disney World saying, you know what, we need to talk. And she wants to start this conversation about, I think, a video we did last week or the week before about, will we have a recession? When will it happen? She was on the yes, I was on the no. So let's welcome Anna back to the show. How you doing, Anna?
I'm doing great, Michael. So glad to be here and to be back from Disney World and, just like everybody else, thinking through all the events of the last 2 weeks and where we are today and, where we're going from here.
Yeah. First off, I'm glad you got to get away, enjoy life, have some fun, make some memories. It was fortuitous timing because you got to go have fun sort of out of the muck and mire of what would probably been a stressful week watching the headlines. So good timing, I guess.
It was, it's interesting. I think we learn something every day.
Mhm.
And, when I decided to go to Disney World, there was some obviously rumblings of coronavirus. Not very many people in the US had it at that point, none in Pennsylvania or Florida. And so we said, right now we're going to go ahead and enjoy our family and make memories and go to Disneyland or Disney World. And we're just going to follow CDC's recommendations to wash our hands constantly, not touch your faces, and
Yeah.
thought, we'll be fine. We'll just kind of boost the immune system and follow common sense
Yeah.
procedures. And then while we were there, the sudden announcement that Disney World is shutting down and the world is shutting down and, needing to flatten the curve and stay away from people. And so, we came back at the right time, but we're definitely, thinking now about self-quarantining. Our schools are shut down for the next 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
so I'm thankful that we went and we enjoyed our family time and didn't let it stop us from doing it. But the timing's a little scary too, knowing that we've just been around, 50,000 people a day
Wow.
that don't all practice nice, hygiene and keeping their hands clean and off of their face and surfaces. So we're, nervous just like anybody else
Yeah.
about, potentially having picked something up or carrying it and, had a great time. And now we're going to be cooped up in the house for a couple of weeks and
So
try to figure out how to navigate it.
I'm a little shocked. So it sounds like Disney World was packed. Was it busy?
It was busy, but apparently not nearly as busy as what they expected. I
Oh,
think
okay.
people had definitely started to cancel by the time that we went a week ago.
Okay.
Some of the rides that normally are a 3-hour wait, since they're brand new rides, were down to the longest lines about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Oh, so
So it was
still
busy.
lots of people.
Still a lot of people, not as
Wow.
high a volume as they expected, but still a lot of people.
Yeah, see, that is clearly going to change, right?
Yeah.
We've clearly got to stop being around thousands of people because you're right. Even though you practice good hygiene, that doesn't mean the rest do. This thing is sneaky, scary. The way it sneaks up on you. Wow, that is not going to happen for the next month.
Yeah,
We
and
won't
that's
see that.
what's really scary, Michael. I was really surprised. I know we're here to talk about the economy, but just
Yep.
really surprised that how many adults we saw coughing into their bare hands and
Wow.
then touching the railings. And
Ugh,
we're like, you people are grown adults and you are basically practicing poor hygiene. And so if those people are carriers and they're
yeah.
touching all the door handles at the grocery stores and the schools and everywhere else, you can see how these things spread very, very quickly, no matter how vigilant we are
Right.
in trying to practice, very good hygiene. So
Oh,
fortunate.
fun, fun, fun. All right. Well, let's talk about recession. Because as
Yes.
you remember all too well, I'm sure we'd had a discussion about a recession, and you had the pro side, meaning you thought one was coming. I think we said 6 to 18 months. I was like, no, I think we're going to skate by. So I'm guessing you're feeling better about your prediction right now.
I wish I could say better about it. I feel
Good point.
unfortunate. If it wasn't so serious of an issue, I think I'd be kind of gloating like Michael told you so. Um, but it is so serious of an issue.
Yeah.
So, I believe that we are in recession. I
Yeah.
do. I think we're going to look back at the numbers and
Yeah.
say, we are here. And, the question is how long it lasts. And I know technically what you talked about 2 weeks ago is it's
Mhm.
2 quarters back to back
Mhm.
before they officially call it recession.
Yep.
But given the fact that our market has taken more than a 20% dip,
Mhm.
and now we're closing in on 30. I think we're at 27 or 28 right now.
Yeah.
There's clear signs of recession, and I think what's going to really tip it over is the fact that 2 weeks ago we didn't hear governments shutting down schools and shutting down businesses and
Mhm.
telling people all over the country that you need to stop serving food inside your restaurants and
Yeah.
start going to go. So that's going to unfortunately cause a lot of small businesses, especially restaurants, groomers, barbers, hair salons. These people are going to have to shut down their businesses if they cater to more than 50 people. And unfortunately, with all the layoffs that I think are going to come, I don't see how we don't go into immediate recession if we haven't started that process already.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick to the classic definition of 2 quarters, and the word quarters is the important part in that, because I think
Yeah.
we're easily going to have 6 months of negative growth, but I think there's still at least a 10% chance we skate by. So Q1, right? This is just my logic, right? Q1, January, February, we're strong enough. March is going to suck. I think we post something between zero point 0.5 and 1.2 for growth. So Q1's off the table. Q2, I suspect, will be the worst of my adult life. The worst of my adult life, I believe, is 8% negative growth right after 9/11. I
Yes.
believe we will see double-digit fall in Q2, so 10, 11%. So unheard of negative growth
Right.
in Q2 because of everybody staying home. Economies don't work that way.
Yeah.
My hope is we do flatten the curve,
Right.
and then we just spring back. The American economy is so strong. I realize this is wishful thinking. I'm willing to call it that. But I'm hoping we get back to 0.1% growth in Q3, because month 2 and month 3 of Q3 will be strong. So I'm not giving up the goat yet with the classic definition, but yeah, we're going to have 6 months of negative growth for sure. It's just going to be spread out over 3 quarters, is at least my current optimistic guess. What do you think?
Sure. And I truly hope you're right, Michael. I really do. I think the government is doing everything they can to try to hold off.
Yep.
But the fact that not only did they cut interest rates 0.5% before we had this little debate a week and a half ago, but yesterday an emergency 1%. So we
Mhm.
are back down to the lowest interest rates, the lowest Fed rate in history back in
Yeah.
2008, and it was there for about 7 years. So
Yeah.
the fact that we're back to quantitative easing, they're dumping, I think it was 1.5, was it billion or trillion?
We did 1.5
Um,
trillion in short-term 30-day stuff, and then we did 700 million
but,
in yeah, quantitative easing. That's crazy
right,
amounts.
and a 1% rate. So what that tells you is the government is basically in panic mode. As much as they want to say, oh, everything's fine, this is under control, they are trying to hold this thing as tightly as possible and stave off a recession if there is any hope to do that.
Mhm.
And it's full stop. They're using every tool available to them. So I think
Yeah.
the only thing left for them really to do is some TARP type action, buying up corporate bonds and maybe stocks themselves, to try to hold off the market. And as you can see today, the market's still nervous even with the government actions. And so
Oh,
I think
the
it's
the
gonna,
market's the
it,
market's not nervous. The market's afraid. Let's use real words.
yeah. True, true.
Yeah.
Yes, true. They're afraid. And I
Yeah.
think it's difficult because as we talked before, I'm not an economist, but they're trying to calm fears in the market, but yet by taking such drastic steps so quickly,
Yeah.
they're creating additional fear in some way. And
Yeah.
so the question is going to be how many people are going to lose a lot because they're afraid, in terms of their retirement funds?
Yep.
And is that going to keep them from spending anything?
Yeah.
People that are, middle America, lower income America are going to be scared to death to lose their jobs. And so they are not going to be spending money anytime soon until we know that they're okay.
Mhm.
I think that as companies close down, they have to temporarily. The question is going to be how quickly can they reopen and start hiring and repaying employees. I have a friend who works for the airlines. And if she is not flying, she is not paid. I was surprised to see that today. I just figured they're on salary and maybe there'd be some type of, government help to incentivize the airlines to keep their people on payroll. But if they're not flying, they're not paid. And so you're going to see that trickle down throughout the country, where we talked about 2 weeks ago, this is going to impact travel and airlines and
Yeah.
cruises. I did not see it impacting schools and restaurants and,
Mm.
all of these small businesses that I think are going to be hurting for some time without significant government interjection,
Yeah.
intervention to try to, increase unemployment benefits or help with rent vouchers or things of that nature.
Yeah.
It could get worse and it could last a while, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say the chances that you are right in this, I don't know what you want to call it, debate, guess, is certainly growing by the day. There's no question. I'm holding on hope to like 10%, right? We'll see. But let's talk about being landlords in an environment like this.
Sure.
I don't know about you, but I've had two types of people reach out to me in the last week or so. Most people, thankfully, are reaching out going, I hope you're okay. I know you talk about one rental at a time.
Yeah.
We keep seeing, cities stopping evictions and tenants aren't going to pay. And are you going to be okay? Right. Thinking that, I'm going to go bankrupt or something. And then there's thankfully a small set of people, but there are some people that reach out and I try to block their comments, but they still come in about being, ha ha ha, you're going to go broke. You don't know what you're talking about. You're high leverage. You're a rotten person. And I'm like, God, why would you celebrate someone's demise? So let's just talk about the reality that both of you are in on March 16th. At least for me, March rents were still 99% collected as of today. I have a small, like 3 people that have partial balances as of today, but March was solid. So March will be fine. I can't promise April, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Have you had any thoughts?
Oh, a lot, Michael. I think, as we look at our investment properties, we've talked a lot about, location being key. So
Mhm.
where you invest and the types of properties that you've invested in really will make a big difference to you as a landlord as to how well you will fare, because it'll impact how well your tenants will fare. So, the fact that I've invested primarily in a market that is very in industry diverse. There's a lot of different employers from different sectors,
Mhm.
will help me to some extent, because it will minimize, I hope, the number of businesses and industries that may be directly impacted and have to lay off some people. And so, having some built-in resilience because of the industry diversity is helpful.
Mhm.
Also, investing in kind of B class neighborhoods where there's strong schools, slightly above average incomes, I think will help. I
Mhm.
think if you're invested in more C minus types of properties, low C minus areas, your workers who are working at stores and restaurants and things of the sort may be really impacted for a while. And therefore, I think you're going to have higher economic vacancy, economic occupancy, where people just can't pay, and maybe higher skips or people that are moving out, harder time re-renting your properties.
Mhm.
And we'll see, what happens to those A-class properties. If you bought things and you're holding on to them now, hoping to force rents by putting in shiny objects and granite and stainless, you could be hurting right now. And so
Yeah.
I feel like my portfolio is pretty resilient as they come, although this is unprecedented times. And so I'm just very, very thankful that I don't have debt other than mortgages, that the ones that I do have are already fairly low interest rates. And I'm working with my banks right now to lower my interest rates, which will lower my payments, which will make it easier for me to absorb my mortgage payment and my expenses, even if people can't pay. And I am presuming that some of my tenants will lose their jobs. And so I'm trying to think through, how can I be responsible and compassionate and work with those tenants
Mhm.
and not kick them out because they've missed a rent payment? how can I make sure that I can cover my own debt payments, even if they can't pay me for a while? And what am I going to do proactively to reassure them that I'm here for them, that I care, that I'm understanding, so
Mhm.
that we don't have people just skipping because they're afraid they can't pay their rents.
Yeah. So it's a couple of things. First off, I'm never been more thankful that I don't own anything that's Class A. I think Class A is going to be
Yeah.
in trouble. I own, most of my stuff is kind of C plus B minus stuff, and I'm happy with that. I call it the affordable inventory. But this is what I did with my inventory,
Sure.
and I just looked at it today. So I have about 35 to 40% of my income that is Section 8 rentals. There's no chance
Mm,
whatsoever that the federal government is not going to pay those vouchers. Zero. They would have riots in the streets. So
good point.
I can count on the income
Yeah.
100%. Next, I also looked at my inventory. About 10% of my units are rented to people on Social Security, and they were approved based on the rent
Mm,
ratio to Social Security. So that is not going to stop whatsoever. So I get up
sure.
to a roughly 50% of my income is via services that aren't going anywhere. That leaves the other half of my inventory is cash payments. Again, I invest in affordable housing. It's the best quality for the dollar. And again, I've been here before. So a couple of things that people need to realize,
Mm,
especially the haters. Those freaking people piss me off.
mm,
I've invested through a recession before, and you know what happens when somebody loses their job? They get unemployment. Hello. Do
true.
you not think the federal government is going to come out with unemployment? They're going to come out with programs, not only unemployment, they're going to come out with sick leave. They're going to come out with taking care of kids or elder. They're going to come out with so many programs um, that I am not going to have to worry about much of my rent collection because again,
Mm,
people I've in the stuff I own, people can pay with their unemployment and they get that weekly or every 2 weeks. I forget. I don't know how long it comes, but I have very little
yeah.
concern. That said, I have gone through my inventory and identified 20 or 25 tenants that are what I consider high risk for my portfolio, meaning they're at the top of the bar, they're in the biggest houses, single income tenants. I have one commercial building that I bought at the bottom that has stores on the bottom, tenants on top. I've reached out to all 25 of them. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I identified the 25. I then identified the 20 that I like, meaning they paid rent, they don't cause problems. The other five, I'd be happy to get rid of. So identified 25, found the 20 I liked. I proactively reached out and said, we're here. We don't know where this is going. Call us ahead of time if something's up and we will, parse this out. So far, all of them have said we're fine, right? Fresno, where I invest, didn't have a single case until yesterday. They are agriculture
Sure.
and distribution based. So unless people suddenly don't need to eat, they're going to be okay. Unless next day shipping stops, they're going to be okay. But still, we have communicated with all 20 tenants that I classified as high risk and said, we're here to help if we need to. But again, even if they
Yeah.
lose their income, the federal government is eventually going to get off their ass and enact some programs because it's very obvious this is a Main Street problem. The federal government will
Right.
eventually get out of its freaking way and create a way to help small businesses because America is built on the backs of small businesses, meaning sub 500 people. There'll be short-term lending, no doc loans, whatever it is. And then there will be these extra incentives because we got to take care of our kids. We got to take care of our elderly. And if you're sick, stay the freaking home and they will make sure you have
Right.
money. And again, it's water, food, shelter. And I feel very good about collecting my rent. I may not get all of it this month, but it will eventually come because what's happening is people are stopped going out. People are stopped buying cars. People are stopped, they're just stopped going out. So they're going to have more income. I actually think this might show people what I talk about all the times, needs versus wants. People are
Right.
cutting out wants. And thankfully
Yeah.
shelter is a need. So I get all the doomsday. I get landlords being nervous. I say evaluate your portfolio. But I have, I actually estimate that I could be down $10,000 in gross rents, worst case, which is less than my cash flow. So we're fine. But
Yeah.
I don't think I lose that long term. I think most of that comes back. I have 5 tenants in the high risk category that I'd be frankly okay losing. Um,
Sure.
so that's kind of how
But I
I see
think
it.
that's the key, Mike, is using compassion to give people time to react if they can't pay,
Yeah.
on the first or on the fifth. I mean, don't go evicting people because you're afraid that if they're there another month, you're going to lose more money and then,
Mm.
you're going to have a hard time re-renting them. So, operate in a sense of compassion, giving people time to adjust, giving these programs to come in and help
Mhm.
people. And I think communication and compassion and working with people is going to be the key to not really suffering those losses as substantially, but being able to collect them even if they're delayed.
Yeah. The other things that are true, again, as smart and experienced landlords like ourselves, the other thing I did is I stopped all capital improvements. I had about $100,000 in capital
Yeah,
improvements scheduled over the next 90 to 120 days, meaning new roofs, resurfacing parking lots,
sure.
things that would generally be good things to do. You know what? I can wait 90 days. Let's see where this is going to go.
Yes,
So that's a savings. And then
absolutely.
let's talk about debt. There's so much conversation about, oh my God, rates went down a point. It's zero now. I can get cheaper debt. Maybe. I mean, if you're paying attention, interest rates have
Right.
gone up for investment loans. I actually talked to a bank that I've had a 20-year career with, and he says we can't take rates any lower. We won't make any money. So he says it doesn't matter if the Fed
Right.
lowered another point. We can't fundamentally go lower.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there
many of
is,
them have a floor.
yeah.
I will say this, Michael, I had a conversation today with my bank because I had already gotten them to agree to drop my interest rate about 1% on
Mhm,
several loans. I think I had 7 or 8 coming up with them.
mhm.
And I called them today and said, listen, I know we're in the process of getting this paperwork done and supposed to sign it today to lock in my rates for another 5 years, but rates have dropped again. And prime was at 4.25, and it's back down to 3.25. It hadn't been published yet on the bank's websites because it's so early. But with prime down at 3.25 and my rates set to float annually once they reset, I have 3 or 4 that are coming in the next 1 to 3 months that I'm like, why lock them in now at 4 and 1/8 when I can just let them reset at 3.25 for a year? So the question now is, do we let them float and how long will prime stay low? What happened right before the last recession is I paid extra to lock in a rate just slightly higher than I think it was maybe 3.5 or 3.75, because I thought there's no way rates are going to stay low. We're going to end up with inflation and rates are going to go back up.
Yeah,
And I ended up paying essentially to lock in a higher rate than I would have if I just let it stay at prime.
yeah,
So one of the things I'm thinking through is how long will prime stay back at 3.25? Is
yeah,
this, the Fed said that they anticipate keeping the rates low now for the foreseeable future. So the question is, what does that look like? Is it another 7 years like it was after '08?
yeah,
Or is it a year and they're back up? So we're going to kind of have to hedge our bets and, make the best call. So I'm thinking maybe I take a couple and let them move to
yeah,
lock in at 3.25 for the next year. And then
yeah,
the other ones, I asked the bank to come down to their floor, and their
yeah,
floor is 4.
yeah.
So while I could try to go refi somewhere else for about 3.5 or 3.75,
It's not worth it.
I'd rather just lock in the floor of 4, keep it there for 5 years, and
Mhm.
cut my losses and be thankful that I lowered my payment a little bit.
Yeah,
So
it's funny you bring that up because again, I've owned stuff for a long time. I had 3 apartment buildings reset during the crash. So these were roughly, it was like 6 and 1/8 up to 6.5.
sure,
2 of the 3 reset to the high threes for 5 or 6 years because they're just that, that's what it said, right? And
right?
then the other one had this clause, can't go lower than 5%. I'm like, darn it.
Yeah,
Why is that in there? I didn't know.
yeah,
I didn't even know to look for that when I got the loans. But
yeah,
that certainly helps for cash flow when you take it from 6.5 to 3 and 1/8 or something. It was amazing.
absolutely.
Um,
And most of mine that were taken out 5 to 6 years ago, there is no floor. It's
yeah,
just prime plus zero. So I'm like, do I want to, just let that float, or
yeah,
do I want to lock in? Now if I were to lock in, they're like, your new floor is 4.
yeah,
You know,
exactly. We got
so
smarter.
I mean that's as low as they will go.
Yep.
To recast something that's otherwise higher now, which is reasonable
Oh yeah,
still.
for sure.
So
Yeah. So I guess my word for landlords is I understand. Well, so first off, I fully expect the federal government or state governments to say no to say no evictions because of this for 60 or 90 days. Fully expect that. It's frankly the right thing to do. But So that, that in theory helps tenants. But what you guys aren't getting is I fully expect the federal government to get out of their freaking way and send these little checks to small businesses and people that says, we got you. This is going to be a short-term blip. Frankly, I expect them to lock us down for a couple of weeks. And in order to do that, they're going to have to make sure people have money to buy food and shelter. Shelter's important.
Yes.
And
right.
yeah, so I do not think it's Armageddon. I'm not concerned at all. I fully expect some vacancies or some non-payment, to happen. I think there'll be some people that try to take advantage of the landlords. I fully expect it. I've seen it. I've been doing this 20 years, but the majority of people won't. I believe the majority of people will get water first, food second, and they will pay their shelter third. And I'm okay being in that order.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think we need to be prepared, to have some people that lag and can't pay for a while.
Yeah.
I think we do need to, make them show us that they've actually lost a job if they have, that we put in some kind of stipulation that, you're to apply for unemployment. And as soon as that kicks in, we will hold off. You want to basically have some guidelines and keep the communication open so that they don't take advantage. But if you've done a good job with tenant screening and you've been good to your tenants, you really shouldn't have that much of an issue. One other thing I just thought I would throw out there, Michael, is I've seen people out on Facebook talk about the fact that after Dodd-Frank and after the last collapse, when the government bailed out AIG and some other firms, that they can't bail out companies anymore. And while it is true that they can no longer pick a single company and offer them a bailout of some sort, they can do what's called broad-based bailouts, which is basically they have to have at least 5 companies in a given category that they can offer some type of assistance to help that group of companies. So while, Disney, let's say, for the cruise lines, or American or United Airlines is down, they can't come and say, we're going to rescue you because of this. But they can come in and say, listen, all U.S. airlines and all U.S. cruise lines and whatever, all schools that were shutting down, we will come in and offer you some type of, 0-rate loans to keep you stable so that you keep paying your people. So that they can take other actions to help larger companies, smaller companies, as well as individuals, in addition to what they, the kind of things that we've already seen them do.
Yeah. You given your background with AIG, I'm going to love to hear your feedback on this comment I'm about to make. I am a huge capitalist. Anybody who knows me know that is true. One of the things that sometimes happens in a capitalist society is sometimes the government needs to come in and be the buyer of last resort. I hope I really hope, really hope the federal government buys 10 to 20%, buys, not lend, buys 10 to 20% of all of our airlines, cruise lines, Boeing, any of these companies that are decided to be critical, because they will be buying at the bottom. And then in their whatever contract, whatever you want to call it, they sell whatever, 10, 20% a year for 5 years. They will turn a profit. As I recall, I didn't even look at it. I should have looked at it before we talked. But when the federal government came in and bailed out or whatever with AIG, didn't they end up turning a huge profit on that investment? Isn't that true?
Absolutely. The government did make a very big profit. And basically we were considered a systemically important financial institution. And basically what that did is it put us under government oversight. And even though the day-to-day stuff was being run by AIG executives and employees, the government basically had auditors there on site literally every day at all of our major offices, and looked at our operations, looked at our procedures, and made sure that we were, basically downsizing in the right way, selling the right things to be able to pay off the government loans. And then we had to pay interest on that loan. And so they did make a significant amount of money. I had a lot of people that thought it was horrible that the government would get involved and bail out a company. But I now know what I didn't know back then is how systemically important the AIG really was, and multiple different large institutions had gone down. And if the government hadn't stepped in, when basically AIG was one of the largest insurers of these other companies that were going down, as well as mortgages, you would have had this trickle effect where many other companies would have gone down, and it would have been disaster for the economic system.
There was
in
no
the new
choice.
Dodd-Frank,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Right, right. And in the new Dodd-Frank Act, they try to recognize this balance between saving the entire U.S. economy when needed versus the moral quandary of bailing out a capitalistic, company that
Mhm.
some people think took on too much risk, because that's what the media likes to say.
Sure.
And so that's why they still have these kind of broad-based authority to say, listen, we recognize that the country is still really intertwined financially in many ways. And so there's
Mhm.
been a lot of backstops put into place to keep certain risks from happening, to keep companies very liquid, banks very liquid, to prevent the types of bailouts that they needed. Where AIG, for example, had significant assets. They had enough assets to get out of what they had, but they weren't liquid.
Right.
So liquidity has gone up, and the liquidity requirements have gone up quite a bit, but you could still have these companies that, if they all go down, it could create shock in our system. And so I think the government has to be able to be in a position to come in, and even though I don't like big government in general,
Mhm.
they need to be able to be in a position to come in and say, if we need to, we will step in and save companies in some way
Mhm.
temporarily, profit off of that. There's no free lunch. They're not just giving them free money. So they can borrow very, very low, but if they bail them out, there will be a return, and the American people will make money on it,
Yeah.
and eventually have it repaid. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I fundamentally believe that the federal government needs to act like Warren Buffett. They have the ability to buy anything they want if they want to. This is how it's going to, this is a Main Street problem. Once the federal government gets off their butt and says, you know what, we are going to take care of small business. We are going to take care of the hourly workers, the people that work on tips. You will have money to buy food and pay for shelter, builds confidence. Then the government comes in and says, there are some companies that are too big, that are too important, that had this once in a lifetime event happen. We're going to own 20% of them, and we'll sell in 5 years when the stocks go up 500%. Instantly, confidence is
Yeah.
back. We avoid a
Right.
recession. Things good, but we still have a bad Q2, and I'm okay with that. We need to have a bad Q2. This curve needs to flatten. We need to get rid of this stupid bug, and all the smart people working on vaccines, keep working. And I wish you nothing but success. We have to take care of our healthcare
Right.
system. Our nurses and
Right.
doctors are putting themselves at risk. So stop going to parties, stop going to events, stay the freaking home.
Yes,
It's my thought.
I agree.
Cool.
I agree.
Awesome. So I am not as I'm not as scared about the future. There's going to be pain. There'll be some uncomfortable conversations. For whatever reason, even though the government is proven to be stupid lots of times, they will eventually figure this out. And
Yeah.
I think we're all going to be okay.
Yeah, I do too. And
Yeah.
I'm actually a lot less fearful than I was in 2008.
Oh,
But part of
yes.
that, Michael, is because I learned so much from 2008 that I positioned myself well enough, I hope, to weather, temporary setbacks that we're going to see today.
Yeah.
But I do understand, because I wasn't in a good position in 2008. I understand how afraid people are right now
Yes.
for their livelihoods and their families, and not only financially, but just for their own health. Am I going to die?
Yeah.
People are really, really scared. And so I just, I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. I also consider myself a realist. I'm not one to go doom and gloom ever, because I
Mhm.
always see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I just don't want to minimize the fact that there are a lot of people who are really scared,
Mhm.
who really could lose jobs,
Oh, yeah.
and landlords who only have a couple of rentals, who don't have a safety net and don't have cash saved, and are going to struggle because maybe they're early on in their investing career, Michael,
Mhm.
and they have a couple of properties like I did back in '08, and I didn't have a safety net. And if a furnace went out, I was in big trouble. And so there are some landlords that I think are in that position today.
For
And
sure.
it's more for them that I'm trying to, help them realize that it could be tough for a while, but you'll get through it. And you just have to do your best, provide for your tenants, take care of yourself, cut back your own spending.
Mhm.
And if you've got anything that you can sell and you need to get liquid, think about selling something. But you just want to be careful and prepare for the worst
Mhm.
and hope for the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're in real estate for any length of time, you almost have to be an eternal optimist, because if you're a pessimist, it'll just eat you alive. So we're
Absolutely.
definitely optimists. Yeah, I would say get ready. And then again, the beauty of all of this. So I am hopefully what you get in this video is we're prepared, but we're less nervous than maybe you expected us to be, right? Because this will pass.
Yeah.
There will be things to take care of tenants, but oh boy,
Yeah.
I see some opportunities coming. I'm excited by what's
Yes.
going to happen in the summer when most owner occupants are still scared and licking their wounds and not figuring out. I am hopefully going to buy a lot of stuff.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope that in a couple of months we can be, able to say that we did take some advantage of the opportunity too. I think though you have to be really, really careful if you're not already financially stable and don't already have a safety net of at least really 6 months expenses for all
Yeah.
your rentals and 6 months expenses for yourself, then this isn't the time to be like, okay, let's get greedy and
Yeah.
let's try to find more to buy. So make sure that you're stable first, just because we're all in different ways. And so I definitely have some cash that I'm sitting on that I've been waiting for opportunity, and I may do that. But I'm first going to make sure that I don't just spend it all because there's opportunity. If we need to make sure that we're thinking about asset preservation as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. But again, the sky's not falling.
Right.
This is a once in a lifetime event for both of us. We have both never
Yes.
been through something like this, but this too shall pass. The Great
Yes, it
Depression
will.
passed, 9/11 passed, the Great Recession
Mhm.
passed, 87 crash passed. We will get through this. I've been telling people now, what do you think your grandkids are going to say about today? They're going to look at the
Yeah.
stock chart and go, oh my God, you could have bought so cheap.
Yes. And
That's
I
what,
said that in 2008. I was like, oh, if I had any money and I wasn't completely depending on AIG for my livelihood, I would have bought a lot of it. But I didn't have any money at that time, and so now I am definitely thinking about, okay, what do I want to buy?
yeah.
And when is the knife going to stop falling? I don't want to catch a falling knife. When's the right time to go in? Or do you do it incrementally? So it's a good time to start researching and preparing for opportunity. Just do it wisely.
Very, very cool. Well, Anna, thank you very much for coming back. I'm glad you're home and safe. We'll talk on Wednesday, right?
Sounds great.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Michael. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.